The Ark Bastion loomed above the rogue planet like a grumpy bouncer at the gates of a cosmic nightclub, ready to throw out anyone who didn't belong. Captain Thane surveyed the mess through the viewport, scratching his chin. The ship had seen better days, but then again, who hadn't? He sipped his coffee, black as a singularity and just as forgiving. "We're a floating scraffy babysitting a bunch of space loonies," he grumbled to his first officer, Lieutenant Kara Voss. Voss, chewing on what was probably the last piece of gum in this quadrant, shrugged. "At least they're not shooting at us. Yet." Her eyes flicked towards the growing fleet of mismatched ships outside. They hung in space like a rusted junkyard, attracted to the rogue planet like moths to an existential flame. "Yeah," Thane said, "but give it time. First they're pilgrims, then they're protesters, then they're pirates. It's the circle of life, Galactic Edition." He set his coffee down, mostly because he couldn't stomach another sip. The doors hissed open, and in strolled Engineer Rax, looking like he hadn't seen daylight in a solar cycle. "Captain," Rax said, "we've got another batch of Velk's devotees trying to sneak aboard. Want me to airlock them?" Thane rubbed his temples. "Tempting, but let's try not to make this a PR nightmare. See if you can usher them back to their tin cans without too much fuss." "On it, boss." Rax turned to leave, smirking as he added, "Maybe we should just start charging admission. A fortune to be made in piety tourism." Voss chuckled. "Think they'd pay in something other than worship beads and starry-eyed fervor?" "Doubt it," Thane said, watching Rax disappear. "But one can dream, right?" The truth was, this whole situation was a cosmic joke with no punchline, and Earth was the punchline. Thane had been around long enough to recognize a scam when he saw one, and this preacher Darius Velk had cult of personality written all over him. Velk's followers were convinced the rogue planet was sacred, though sacred how, no one could quite agree. "I swear," Thane muttered, "if one more starry-eyed pilgrim asks me about enlightenment, I'm shoving them out an airlock myself." Voss laughed. "That's the spirit. Who knew space could be so culty?" "At this rate, we'll need a bigger ship just to hold all their delusions," Thane replied. "Speaking of delusions," he added, nodding towards the comms panel, "patch me through to Velk. Let's see what our resident messiah is preaching today." Voss tapped a few buttons, and Darius Velk's voice crackled through the speakers, oozing charisma like a snake oil salesman on a good day. "My children," Velk intoned, "the time has come to embrace the celestial truth. This rogue world is our beacon, our promised sanctuary." Thane rolled his eyes so hard, he almost saw the back of his skull. "Promised sanctuary, my ass. It's a hunk of rock with delusions of grandeur," Voss snorted. "Aren't we all?" Velk's voice continued, blathering on about destiny and cosmic awakenings. Thane cut the comms with a flick of his wrist. "If I hear cosmic one more time, I'm gonna barf. Or start believing," Voss quipped. "Not in this lifetime," Thane said. "Let's see what else needs my attention before I lose what's left of my sanity." The bridge was buzzing with activity, crew members darting around like bees on caffeine. A console beeped ominously. "Incoming transmission," said Rix, the communications officer, looking almost excited to have something to do. Thane sighed. "Put it through." "Let's hope it's more interesting than our last sermon." A hologram fizzled into existence, a representative from the Earth Coalition looking as stern as a teacher on the last day of school. "Captain Thane," the rep began with all the warmth of a black hole, "how's the containment going?" "Swimmingly," Thane lied. "We've only had to eject 5 ships today, a new record." The rep didn't even flinch. "Good, keep it that way. The Coalition doesn't want this getting out of hand." "No worries," Thane said, flashing a grin that could have powered a minor star. "We've got it all under control." As if on cue, another alarm blared, signaling more unauthorized docking attempts. "I'll have to call you back," he said, cutting the transmission before the rep could respond. Voss raised an eyebrow. "Think they bought it?" "Does it matter?" Thane said. "What are they gonna do, send more paperwork?" Together they watched the chaos unfold outside. Ships jostling for position, each one full of hope and fervor and a healthy dose of desperation. Thane couldn't decide if it was funny or just sad. Maybe both. "All right," he announced. "Let's get this circus under control. Voss, coordinate with the docking teams. Rix, keep an eye on comms for anything interesting, and Rax." The engineer poked his head back through the door, grinning. "Yeah, Cap, try not to blow anything up today." Rax winked. No promises. As the crew scrambled to keep the Ark Bastion from being overrun by zealots, Thane couldn't help but wonder how they'd ended up here, orbiting a rock with delusions of grandeur, babysitting a bunch of cosmic wanderers with too much faith and not enough common sense. It was hard not to feel like the galaxy's most overqualified janitor. But someone had to do it, and for better or worse, Thane was the guy. He'd always had a knack for ending up in the wrong place at the wrong time, and this was no exception. If nothing else, it was never boring. The day dragged on, a blur of docking requests, peacekeeping missions, and the occasional firefight when diplomacy failed, which was often, given the crowd they were dealing with. Thane stared out at the rogue planet, wondering what the hell made it so special. Probably nothing, he figured, except for the people who were desperate enough to believe in it. "Captain," Voss called, drawing him back to reality. "We've got another problem." "Of course we do," Thane replied. "What is it this time?" The lieutenant gestured to the view screen, where a particularly battered ship was trying to maneuver into dock. "Looks like they've run out of fuel. They're requesting emergency assistance." Thane sighed. "And let me guess, they're fresh out of gratitude too." "Naturally," Voss nodded. "All right, let's haul them in before they become a permanent fixture, and double-check for weapons this time. I don't feel like playing Guess Who's armed with Velk's merry band today." As they worked to rescue the stranded ship, Thane couldn't shake the feeling that things were about to get a lot more complicated. Velk's influence was growing, and along with it, the number of ships descending on their little corner of the universe. The stragglers they pulled in were a mixed bunch, all wide-eyed wonder and fervent belief. Thane had half a mind to ask Velk what he was feeding these people, but he doubted he'd like the answer. A steady diet of bullshit, most likely. Once the ship was docked and the crew disarmed, though not without a few scuffles, Thane finally had a moment to breathe. He leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling as if it held the answers to life, the universe, and everything else. "Think we'll ever get out of this?" Voss asked, joining him in his moment of existential pondering. Thane chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. "Not if these pilgrims have anything to say about it." "Well, at least it's never dull, right?" "Yeah," he agreed, "until it is." As the day wound down into night, or whatever passed for night on a fortress ship orbiting a rogue planet, Thane couldn't shake the feeling that things were coming to a head. Velk's voice echoed in his mind, promising salvation in a galaxy that had long since given up on such things. Maybe the rogue planet was more than just a rock, but Thane doubted it. More likely, it was just another illusion in a universe full of them, a mirage for the desperate and the faithful. And him. He was just the guy stuck in the middle, trying to keep the illusion from tearing them all apart. As he drifted off to whatever passed for sleep in this chaotic corner of space, Thane couldn't help but wonder what fresh hell tomorrow would bring. But then again, that was the beauty of it, wasn't it? In a universe full of uncertainty, at least you could always count on things getting worse. Engineer Mara Kent was elbow-deep in a jumble of wires and circuits, looking like she was trying to disarm a particularly pissed-off toaster. Sparks flew as she yanked another charred component from the panel. She muttered to herself, something about hating her life choices, as her team scrambled around her, trying to keep the Ark Bastion from turning into an oversized paperweight. "Hey, Mara," shouted one of her techs, a wiry kid named Jelko with perpetual bedhead and a gleam of mad optimism. It was annoying, frankly. "I think there's another power spike coming." "Great," Mara grumbled, her voice dripping with the kind of enthusiasm usually reserved for dental surgery. "Just what I needed. A jolt to go with my existential crisis." The Ark Bastion was a mess, and not the lovable kind you'd invite over for drinks. Systems were glitching like they had a personal vendetta, and the ship's orbit was wobbling dangerously toward the rogue planet. Some of Velk's fanatics had managed to worm their way into the ship systems, their idea of divine intervention, apparently involving dragging the Bastion with them into oblivion. "Hey, Captain," came Lieutenant Kara Voss's voice over the comms, managing to sound casual even as everything was falling apart. "We've got some unscheduled fireworks down here." "You seeing this?" Captain Thane rubbed his eyes, his patience thinner than a politician's promise. "Yeah, Voss, I'm seeing it. Mara, how's it looking down there?" Mara glanced up from her pit of despair. "You mean aside from the sabotage, the impending doom, and the fact that someone left a half-eaten sandwich in the control panel? Sounds like a regular Tuesday," Thane replied, his voice crackling through the comms with a hint of gallows humor. "Can you fix it, or should we start writing our obituaries?" "Give me a minute," Mara said, eyeing her team like a Marine sergeant about to lead a charge. "Jelko, get me those flux stabilizers, stat. And for the love of starships, someone find out who's been messing with my systems before I lose my last shred of sanity." Jelko dashed off, and Mara focused on the task at hand. The ship systems were a tangled web of chaos, and she was the poor soul tasked with untangling it. She didn't mind a good challenge, but this was like trying to win a game of chess against an opponent who'd replaced half the pieces with live grenades. Meanwhile, up on the bridge, Thane was trying to keep his cool. "Voss, any sign of more stowaways?" "Nothing yet," Voss replied, still chewing gum like it was the only thing keeping her from snapping. "But if I were a betting woman, and I am, I'd say we've got a few Velk sympathizers lurking around." "Great," Thane sighed. "Just what we need, an inside job." At that moment the comms crackled again. It was Rax with his usual lack of good news. "Cap, looks like our guests brought some party favors. Found a few explosive devices rigged up in the cargo bay." "Wonderful," Thane said, deadpan. "Everyone's a bloody comedian today." Mara was making progress, though. She'd managed to isolate the part of the system that had been tampered with, an access panel that hadn't been checked since roughly the dawn of time. Her fingers flew over the controls, rerouting power and bypassing the damaged circuits. "Think you can get us stable, Mara?" Thane asked, his voice betraying a hint of hope, if only because he needed something to cling to. "Stable-ish," Mara replied, not looking up from her work. "But give me a few more minutes and we might not have to start praying just yet." Jelko returned, handing her the tools she needed. "Who do you think did this?" he asked, curiosity mingling with concern. "Whoever it is," Mara said, "they've got a death wish messing with my ship. I swear if Velk's followers keep this up, I'm gonna start charging them per act of sabotage." "Charging them for sabotage," Jelko mused. "That's an interesting business model." "Yeah, well, desperation makes for strange bedfellows." Mara didn't miss a beat as she reconnected a bundle of wires, watching as the system flickered back to life. In the background, one of the techs called out, "Core systems are stabilizing, Mara." "Good," she said. "But keep an eye out for any more surprises. Last thing we need is another round of party tricks." It was at that moment that a message from Darius Velk himself bled into the ship's comms, the timing impeccable in its annoyance. "Fellow travelers," Velk's voice purred, "the universe calls us to a higher purpose." "More like a lower orbit," Thane muttered, cutting off the transmission before Velk could spread any more of his celestial nonsense. Things were starting to calm down, but the tension in the air was thicker than a politician's skin. Thane gathered his senior staff for a quick debrief, wanting to get a handle on just how bad the situation was. "All right," Thane began once everyone was assembled. "What's the verdict? How screwed are we?" Mara leaned against a bulkhead, arms crossed. "We've managed to stabilize things for now, but if Velk's minions have access to our systems, it's only a matter of time before they try again." "Great," Thane said. "So we're not screwed yet, but we're definitely in the queue." Rax spoke up next, looking far too cheerful given the circumstances. "We disarmed the explosives, but we need to figure out how they got on board in the first place." "They must have help from the inside," Voss added, her expression serious. Someone on this ship is playing for the other team. Thane nodded, mulling over their options. All right, let's start by tightening security. I want everyone vetted top to bottom. If there's a snake in the grass, let's find it before it bites us in the ass. As they dispersed, Thane caught Mara by the elbow. Hey, you did good down there, he said, his voice softer than usual. Thanks, Mara replied, a small smile breaking through her usual stoic demeanor. Just another day in paradise, right? Yeah, Thane said. Except in this paradise, the fruit's poisoned, the wildlife's hostile, and the locals are fanatics. With their brief moment of camaraderie over, Mara returned to her duties, determined to keep the Ark Bastion afloat against the tide of lunacy surrounding them. Meanwhile, Thane and Voss turned their attention to the more immediate problem, rooting out the traitors among their crew. They started with the bridge staff, running everyone through a gauntlet of questions that would make a seasoned interrogator proud. Most of the crew passed with nothing more than a bit of grumbling, but a few had answers that didn't quite add up. Do you really think Velk got to some of them? Voss asked Thane as they reviewed the results. Hard to say, Thane replied, leaning back in his chair, but I'm betting my last ration bar that someone here thinks Velk's got the right idea. Voss snorted. I'd rather trust a weatherman than that snake oil salesman. Yeah, Thane said, but faith does strange things to people. Makes them see what they want to see, believe what they want to believe. Together, they pored over the data, looking for any inconsistencies, any hint of impropriety. It was tedious work, but necessary if they wanted to keep the Ark Bastion safe. As the day turned into night, the crew finally started to relax, though the tension in the air was still palpable, like a storm cloud just waiting to burst. Thane sat in his quarters reviewing logs and reports, trying to piece together who among them might be a mole. His thoughts were interrupted by a buzz from his door. Come in, he called, setting aside the tablet. Voss entered, a rare look of uncertainty on her face. Thane, we might have found something. What is it? He asked, instantly alert. We got a hit on one of the crew, Voss said, handing him a tablet. Ensign Laro. He's been in contact with Velk's followers. I don't think it's just pen pals. Thane scanned the data, a frown deepening on his brow. And here I thought Laro was just another guy trying to keep his head down. Turns out he's trying to keep it up Velk's ass, Voss said, deadpan. All right, Thane said, rubbing his temples. Let's have a chat with our friend Laro. See if we can shine a light on whatever rock he's been hiding under. The interrogation was short and not particularly sweet. Laro's facade crumbled under the pressure, spilling details of his involvement with Velk's followers like a sieve. It wasn't exactly surprising, but it was disappointing. Thane had hoped for better from his crew. So, what do we do with him? Voss asked once Laro had been escorted to the brig. Keep him under lock and key for now, Thane replied. Maybe we can use him as leverage, make Velk back off. You think he'll trade his pawn for us leaving him alone? Voss asked skeptically. Maybe, Thane said. But even if he doesn't, it sends a message. We're not as dumb as they think we are. The night dragged on, the crew on edge, waiting for the next disaster to strike. Thane tried to sleep, but his mind was a whirl of half-formed plans and lingering doubts. He wondered if they could hold it together long enough to see this through. As he lay in the darkness, he couldn't help but marvel at the absurdity of it all. Here they were, in the vastness of space, surrounded by people who believed in something he couldn't even begin to fathom. And yet, despite everything, he felt a strange kinship with them. Maybe it was the shared sense of desperation, the knowledge that they were all just trying to survive in a universe that didn't give a damn. Eventually, sleep claimed him, though it offered little respite. Dreams of rogue planets and cosmic cults plagued his mind, a reminder that even in rest, there was no escape from the madness. When morning, or whatever passed for morning on the Ark Bastion, arrived, Thane was already awake, ready to face whatever fresh hell awaited him. He had a feeling it was going to be a long day. But then again, what else was new? After all, in a universe full of chaos and uncertainty, at least some things never changed. Mara stared at the artifact, her expression a mix of curiosity and exasperation. It sat there, innocuous and unassuming like a paperweight in some alien office, but she'd learned the hard way that looks could be deceiving, especially when it came to things found on a ship caught in the gravitational dance with a rogue planet. "So," Jelko said, scratching at his perpetually mussed hair like he might coax it into submission, "do we poke it with a stick, or—" "That's your solution, Jelko." "Poke it and hope it doesn't explode," Mara shot back, raising an eyebrow. "Hey, I'm just here to provide moral support and dumb ideas," Jelko replied, grinning. "You're the brains of this operation." Mara huffed, brushing dust off the artifact. It was vaguely pyramidal, with some weird engravings that seemed to writhe if you looked at them too long. "This thing's probably the reason our systems are going haywire. Or it's a piece of art from a civilization with terrible taste," Jelko offered, squinting at the carvings. "Seriously, looks like some kid went nuts with a chisel. Either way, it doesn't belong here." Mara glanced at her scanner, which was blinking nonsensically. "And it's messing with our systems. Typical." As she worked, a thought nagged at the back of her mind. Velk's followers had been targeting their systems. Maybe this artifact was more than just space detritus. Maybe it was part of Velk's plan to draw them in, like bait for particularly gullible fish. Meanwhile, on the bridge, Captain Thane was having a conversation that felt like verbal chess with a psychopath who'd glued the pieces to the board. Darius Velk's holographic image flickered before him, the preacher's serene expression at odds with the chaos he incited. "Captain Thane," Velk purred, his voice smooth enough to slip on, "you misunderstand our intentions." "Enlighten me," Thane replied, leaning back with the air of a man who'd lost patience several crises ago. "Why are you sabotaging my ship? Leisure activity? Hobby? Or is it just because you're an interstellar pain in the ass?" Velk smiled, a saintly expression that made Thane want to punch him through the comms. "We seek transcendence, Captain, a new beginning for humanity, guided by the wisdom of the rogue planet." "Right," Thane said, his voice heavy with sarcasm. "New beginning sounds great. Shame you didn't consider asking us first. Our methods might seem harsh," Velk continued with the air of a man who'd never met a problem he couldn't outspeak, "but they are necessary to awaken humanity to its potential. By blowing us up," Thane raised an eyebrow. "That's one hell of a wake-up call." Velk's expression didn't waver. "Sacrifices must be made for the greater good." Thane sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. It was like arguing with a recording. "And what's this about an artifact? Something your followers brought on board?" Velk's eyes flickered, a brief crack in his serene facade. "Ah, you found it. Excellent. It's a key, you see, to unlocking the secrets the planet holds." "A key, huh? Funny, it looks more like a rock with delusions of grandeur," Thane remarked dryly. "You mock what you don't understand, Captain. You are on the cusp of a revelation." "Revelation or not, keep your celestial souvenirs to yourself," Thane retorted. "And if you think we're handing over this ship, you've got another thing coming." The transmission cut out, Velk's face fading with an infuriating sense of self-satisfaction left behind. Thane sat back, his mind a tumult of frustration and wry appreciation for Velk's sheer audacity. Down in engineering, Mara was making progress deciphering the artifact with Jelko's help, or at least, he was holding tools and offering commentary while she did the actual work. It was like a cosmic jigsaw puzzle, only with more chances of accidentally detonating something. "Think we can use it against Velk?" Jelko asked, watching as Mara tweaked a component inside the artifact. "Maybe," Mara grunted as she adjusted her grip. "Or it might just blow us to kingdom come. 50-50. "Those are better odds than I usually get," Jelko quipped. "Let's roll the dice." Mara shook her head, but she couldn't help the slight smile. There was something comforting about the absurdity of their situation, two engineers tinkering with alien tech while the universe danced around them. Their banter was interrupted by an urgent call from Voss. "Mara, we've got a situation. Thane wants you on the bridge yesterday." Mara exchanged a look with Jelko. "Can't catch a break, can we?" "Hey, at least we won't die bored," Jelko shrugged, following her out of engineering. On the bridge, the atmosphere was tense. Thane was pacing, looking every bit like a man who'd been served one too many cosmic lemons and was contemplating tossing the whole lot into space. Voss stood beside him, arms crossed, chewing gum like it had personally offended her. "What's the emergency?" Mara asked, stepping in with Jelko behind her. Thane looked up, gesturing to the display. "Velk's followers are making a move. From what we can gather, they are planning to board. They want their key back." "Great," Jelko muttered. "Our fan club's here for a visit, and they brought pitchforks," Voss added dryly. With the situation rapidly spiraling, Thane turned to Mara. "Can we use that thing to our advantage?" Mara considered, then nodded slowly. "If we can figure out how to activate it without, taking us all to the afterlife, it might just turn the tide." "Do it," Thane ordered. "Whatever it takes." As Mara and Jelko headed back to engineering, the ship shuddered, an ominous reminder that time was running out. The boarding parties from Velk's followers were getting closer, and the Ark Bastion was teetering on the brink, a precarious dance over an abyss of chaos. In the bowels of the ship, Mara worked with Jelko, their banter a constant in the madness. "Think Velk's got a backup plan if this one fails?" Jelko asked, handing her a tool. "Probably involves more explosions," Mara replied, her tone resigned. "He's got a one-track mind, that one." Together they delved into the artifact's mysteries, trying to coax it into cooperation. It was like trying to teach a rock to juggle, only with higher stakes and a far worse outcome if they failed. On the bridge, Thane and Voss coordinated the defense, their banter dark and edged with stress. Voss said, eyeing the sensors, "if this ship survives, I'm gonna need a vacation." "A long one, preferably somewhere without cults." "Agreed," Thane replied, nodding. "How about a deserted asteroid? Just you, me, and the sound of silence." "I could get used to that," Voss said, a ghost of a smile on her lips. But any thoughts of hypothetical vacations were shoved aside as the proximity alert blared. Velk's ships were closing in, a swarm of determination and fanaticism. The Ark Bastion groaned under the stress, its systems faltering as the pressure mounted. Back in engineering, Mara swore under her breath as the artifact hummed ominously, lights flickering along its surface. "It's doing something," she declared, not quite sure if that was good or bad. "Should we stop it?" Jelko asked, sounding more than a little uncertain. "Too late for that," Mara replied, fingers dancing over the controls. "Let's just hope it's not about to blow us all to hell." The ship shuddered violently, lights flickering as the artifact pulsed with an eerie glow. For a moment, everything held still, the calm before the storm, before the artifact's energy surged through the ship. On the bridge, the effect was immediate. Systems blared warnings, the screens flashing as the Ark Bastion's trajectory shifted. Thane and Voss exchanged a look, knowing they were riding the edge of a very sharp knife. "Mara, what the hell is going on down there?" Thane barked over the comms. "We're working on it," Mara shot back, her voice tight with concentration. "Just keep us from getting blown out of the sky for a few more minutes." "Noted," Thane replied dryly, turning his attention back to the encroaching ships. The Ark Bastion, its systems infused with the artifact's energy, seemed to come alive, shifting its orbit with a grace it hadn't possessed since before the sabotage. Mara and Jelko watched as the artifact's glow intensified, its power stabilizing and integrating with the ship. "Well," Jelko said, a touch of awe in his voice, "I didn't see that coming." "Neither did I," Mara admitted, eyeing the artifact warily. "But let's not celebrate just yet." On the bridge, the tension was palpable as they rode the thin edge of survival. Thane and Voss coordinated the defense, their banter the only thing keeping the fear at bay. "Think we'll live through this?" Voss asked, her tone casual despite the circumstances. "Honestly, I'm not sure," Thane admitted. "But if we do, drinks are on me." "Deal," Voss replied with a smirk. With the artifact's power coursing through the Ark Bastion, the ship danced a precarious ballet in space, its newfound agility keeping Velk's followers at bay, at least for the moment. In engineering, Mara and Jelko worked tirelessly to maintain the balance, their banter a constant backdrop to the chaos. "Maybe we should keep this thing," Jelko suggested, nodding at the artifact. "Yeah, because having explosive alien tech on board has worked out so well for us," Mara shot back, though there was a hint of a grin on her lips. As the battle raged on, it became clear that the Ark Bastion was no ordinary ship, not anymore. With the artifact's power, it was a force to be reckoned with, a beacon of defiance in the face of fanaticism. And for the first time since this whole mess began, there was a flicker of hope, however small, that they might just have a fighting chance. As the Ark Bastion spun like a drunken top in the void, a sudden meteor storm decided to join the party. Tiny bits of cosmic debris battered the hull with all the subtlety of a barroom brawl, sending vibrations through the ship that would have made a lesser vessel cringe. The alert systems blared their disapproval, and the lights flickered in a feeble attempt to dramatize the situation. Down in engineering, Mara was juggling more problems than a budget circus clown. "Oh great," she muttered, as another shudder rocked the ship. "As if we didn't have enough on our plate," Jelko, ever the optimist, or maybe just too dumb to realize the gravity literal and figurative of their predicament, peered at the readings. "Think it's the universe trying to tell us something?" "Yeah," Mara snapped, "like screw you specifically." Meanwhile, on the bridge, Captain Thane was dealing with his own brand of chaos. "What now?" he growled as the ship lurched again. Voss shot him a look that said she was about as fed up with meteor showers as she was with Velk's fanatics. "It's like the universe is throwing a tantrum," Voss remarked, her jaw working overtime on a piece of gum. "I vote we send it to its room." "Can't argue with that," Thane replied, watching the external monitors light up with streaks of incoming debris. It was like a cosmic light show, if you happen to hate the concept of living. While the Ark Bastion danced with its uninvited stellar guests, Velk's followers decided the chaos was the perfect smokescreen for their coup. The cultists, all fanatical grins and wild eyes, launched their assault on the ship's critical sections. They moved like ghosts, slipping through the chaos with the grace of shadows and the intentions of a bull in a china shop. "This is bad," Voss declared, watching as cultists popped up on the internal sensors like a bad rash. "Bad?" Thane echoed. "I'd call it a clusterfuck, but that's a bit too polite." The cultists, apparently having mistaken a spaceship for a playground, quickly seized control of engineering and the ship's weapon systems. With their newfound power, they aimed the Ark Bastion straight for Earth with the intent to turn the planet into a crater. In engineering, Mara found herself face to face with a group of Velk's zealots. They had the kind of expressions usually reserved for people who thought they'd found the meaning of life in a cereal box. "Get out," one of them ordered, waving a makeshift weapon that looked suspiciously like a wrench with delusions of grandeur. "Or what?" Mara challenged, her hands raised in a gesture that was half surrender, half "you're an idiot." "Or we take this ship down with us," the zealot replied, with the air of someone who just announced a surprise party. "Nice plan," Mara deadpanned. "That'll show us." Meanwhile, Jelko was doing his best impression of a very frightened statue, his eyes darting between the cultists and Mara. Mara, working on it," she murmured, eyes scanning the panels like they contained the secrets to the universe, or at least a way to stop it from blowing up. As the cultists set about their sabotage, Mara's mind raced. The artifact's power was still coursing through the ship, a potential ace in the hole if she could figure out how to harness it. It was like trying to light a fire with a tornado, but desperation made for a great motivator. On the bridge, Thane was wrestling with a control panel that had decided now was a great time to have a nervous breakdown. "Mara, if you can hear this, now would be a great time to pull off a miracle." "Define miracle," Mara's voice crackled over the comms, laced with sarcasm and static. "Us not crashing into Earth would be a start," Thane replied, his tone as dry as a Martian summer. Back in engineering, Mara's fingers danced over the controls. The artifact hummed ominously, its energy a palpable presence in the room. "All right, you damn relic," she muttered under her breath. "Time to play ball." With a deft twist and a silent prayer to whatever gods might be listening, she activated a series of commands. The artifact pulsed, sending a wave of power through the ship systems. Lights flickered as the Arc Bastion responded, its trajectory shifting with a will of its own. The maneuvering thrusters fired, nudging the ship off its collision course with Earth by the barest of margins. Jelko, eyes wide with a mix of awe and terror, let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. "Did we just not die?" "Looks like it," Mara replied, more than a little surprised herself. "But let's not plan the victory parade just yet." On the bridge, Thane and Voss watched as the threat level dropped from certain doom to probably screwed later. "Nice save, Mara," Voss commended over the comms, her tone begrudgingly impressed. "Remind me to thank the cultists for giving us something to work with," Thane added, shaking his head with a wry smile. The Arc Bastion had dodged the immediate threat, but the cultists weren't done yet. Having failed to crash the ship, they redoubled their efforts to take control. It was a battle of attrition now, with the crew fighting back against the zealots scattered throughout the ship. As the cat-and-mouse game played out, Mara remained in engineering, her focus on maintaining the ship systems and keeping the artifact in check. Jelko hovered nearby, occasionally offering a tool or a word of encouragement that was more comedic than comforting. "Think Velk's got a plan C?" Jelko asked, as if the idea of further complications was somehow amusing. "Probably involves more cults and less common sense," Mara replied, adjusting another panel. "But at least we're still here to deal with it." With tensions running high and the threat of another coup hanging over them, the crew of the Arc Bastion braced for whatever came next. The artifact's power had given them a temporary edge, but it was a double-edged sword in very unsteady hands. On the bridge, Thane and Voss coordinated the defense, their exchange a mixture of gallows humor and grim determination. "If we survive this, I'm seriously considering early retirement," Voss commented, her tone somewhere between sarcasm and sincerity. "Agreed," Thane replied, eyes fixed on the displays. "Maybe we'll open a bar, call it the end of the world." "Sounds fitting," Voss replied with a wry grin. As the battle continued, Velk's followers showed no signs of giving up. The ship was a battlefield, echoing with the sounds of conflict and the constant hum of the artifact's power. In the chaos, it was easy to forget that just a few hours ago, this had been a mission of exploration, not survival. In engineering, Mara and Jelko worked tirelessly to keep the systems balanced, their banter a small island of sanity in a sea of madness. "So," Jelko said, wiping a sweaty brow with the back of his hand, "think we'll ever look back on this and laugh?" Mara shot him a sideways glance. "If we survive, I'm putting this all in my memoirs." Chapter 1. Things You Should Never Touch on a Spaceship. "Sounds like a bestseller," Jelko replied, a hint of mischief in his voice. Meanwhile, the cultists were regrouping, intent on regaining control. The crew fought back, their resolve hardened by desperation and the will to survive. It was a battle of wits and wills, with the fate of the Arc Bastion hanging in the balance. As the minutes stretched into hours, the tension on the ship was palpable. The artifact, still glowing ominously, was both their salvation and their burden, a reminder of the fine line between triumph and disaster. In the end, it was the crew's tenacity and the unpredictability of the artifact that turned the tide. Thane and Voss, leading from the bridge, coordinated with precision and grit, their banter a steady beat in the chaos. "Think we can count this as a win?" Voss asked, as the cultists' hold weakened. "Let's call it a qualified success," Thane replied, a ghost of a smile playing on his lips. In engineering, Mara and Jelko watched as the ship's system steadied, the artifact's energy stabilizing in a way that was as comforting as it was unsettling. "Looks like we're not dead yet," Mara remarked, her voice a mixture of relief and exhaustion. Yet being the operative word, Jelko added, though there was a hint of hope in his tone. As the Ark Bastion settled into a new orbit, the crew took a collective breath. The threat of Velk's followers had been staved off for the moment, but the battle's scars ran deep. On the bridge, Thane and Voss shared a look that spoke volumes. They'd survived another day, but the fight was far from over. The rogue planet still loomed, a silent sentinel in the darkness, and the artifact's mysteries were far from unraveled. For now, though, survival was enough. As the ship's lights flickered back to life, a tentative peace settled over the Ark Bastion. It was the calm before the next storm, a brief respite amid the chaos. "Think we'll ever get used to this kind of life?" Voss asked, her voice tinged with weary amusement. "Probably not," Thane replied, leaning back in his chair. "But hey, at least it's never boring." With that, the crew of the Ark Bastion prepared for whatever came next, their spirits unbroken and their resolve unyielding. In the vastness of space, they were just another ship, another story, but one that refused to go quietly into the night. The Ark Bastion limped through the void, a wounded beast fighting for survival. On the bridge, Captain Thane was doing his best to look like he was confidently in charge, but mostly he just looked like a man who hadn't slept in 3 days. "All right, people," he barked, his voice hoarse from yelling at everyone and everything. "We've got cultists running amok, a rogue planet flirting with our orbit, and a ship that's about as stable as a politician's promise. Suggestions?" Lieutenant Voss chewed her gum thoughtfully, the only thing about her that seemed calm. "Well, we could surrender. Tell them we're out of coffee and hope they are sympathetic." Thane chuckled darkly. "Noted. Any non-suicidal suggestions, shoot them." Voss shrugged, as if she was suggesting the weather might turn later. "Works for me," Thane replied, glancing at the blinking consoles. "Too bad they've got our weapons." On the lower decks, Mara Kent was dealing with her own brand of madness. The engineering bay was a war zone, wires and sparks flying as if the ship itself was trying to join in the fun. "Jelko, how's that bypass coming?" She called over her shoulder, hands deep in a console that looked more like a snake pit than a piece of advanced technology. "Working as fast as I can," Jelko replied, his optimism fraying at the edges. "You know, I used to like puzzles," Mara snorted. "And I used to like quiet walks, but here we are. Ever think of taking up meditation?" Jelko suggested, twisting a wrench with the enthusiasm of a man who'd rather be anywhere else. "Sure," Mara replied. "Right after we repel the zealots, fix the ship, and avoid becoming a planetary pancake." Jelko grinned. "Sounds like a solid plan." The internal comms crackled to life, and Thane's voice filled the engineering bay. "Mara, status report." Mara glanced at the artifact, its eerie glow casting strange shadows across the room. "Still breathing, Captain, but just barely. The artifact's doing something funny with our systems. I think it's trying to help, but it's like getting a hug from a drunk uncle, unpredictable and potentially hazardous. Any chance it can do more of that helping thing before we're all toast?" Thane asked, his tone more hopeful than sarcastic for once. "Working on it," Mara replied, her fingers dancing over the controls with the desperation of someone trying to defuse a bomb while blindfolded. In the corridors, Engineer Rax was playing a particularly violent game of hide and seek with a handful of Velk's followers. He ducked into a side passage, cursing under his breath. "Why do they always have to go for engineering first?" he muttered, peering around the corner. Ahead, a pair of cultists were dismantling panels with the enthusiasm of children opening presents. "You know, we're probably voiding our warranty right now," Rax called out, stepping into view with a makeshift weapon that could generously be called a bludgeon. The cultists turned, surprise etched on their faces. "Stop him!" one yelled, pointing dramatically as if this was a stage play and not a life-or-death struggle. Rax grinned, a manic edge to his smile. "Come on then, let's dance." Back on the bridge, Thane and Voss were coordinating the defense, their conversation a blend of military precision and gallows humor. "Think we should send a message back to Earth?" Voss asked, half joking. "Something like, 'Wish you were here.'" Just kidding, stay the hell away. Only if we include a postcard, Thane replied dryly, watching as the ship's integrity continued to fluctuate like a stock market crash. What's the artifact doing? Voss asked, her eyes narrowing as a new set of alarms added their voices to the cacophony. Besides giving us all heart attacks, it's stabilizing some systems, destabilizing others. Like giving a toddler a wrench and asking them to fix a car, Voss snorted. So, business as usual then, pretty much. In engineering, Mara was juggling more problems than a three-ring circus. Jelko, the secondary power conduit's about to blow. Are we covered? Just rerouted it, Jelko replied, sweat streaming down his face as he worked. But I swear this ship's got more problems than a soap opera. No kidding, Mara replied, her attention divided between a dozen tasks. And I'm fresh out of plot twists. The artifact hummed ominously, its energy coursing through the ship like a wild river. Mara glanced at it, suspicion and hope battling for dominance. You've got something up your sleeve, don't you? She murmured, half to herself. Jelko gave her a curious look. Talking to the artifact now. Talking to anything that'll listen, Mara replied. And right now, it seems to be the only one with any ideas. The ship shuddered, a reminder that their window of opportunity was closing. All right, old friend, Mara said, addressing the artifact like it was an unruly pet. Let's see what you've got. With a series of deft keystrokes, she began rerouting power through the artifact's core, hoping against hope it wouldn't blow them all to kingdom come. The lights flickered, the ship groaned, and then miraculously stabilized. Well, I'll be damned, Jelko muttered, eyes wide. Did we just? Yep, Mara replied, her relief tempered with disbelief. We just cheated death. Again, the comms crackled and Thane's voice cut through the tension. Mara, what the hell did you just do? Something stupid, Mara replied, a grin spreading across her face. And it worked. On the bridge, Thane looked at Voss, a mixture of admiration and exasperation in his eyes. Why do our best solutions always involve a healthy dose of insanity? Because sanity's overrated, Voss replied with a shrug. And boring. As the Ark Bastion settled into a slightly less suicidal trajectory, the crew took a moment to catch their breath. The cultists' numbers were dwindling, their assault losing steam as their initial advantage slipped away. In the corridors, Rax was still locked in combat, his makeshift bludgeon swinging with precision and fury. You know, I could have been a chef, he said conversationally, ducking a wild swing from a cultist. I hear it's less stressful, less fun too, the cultist replied, lashing out with a grin that promised pain. Touché, Rax admitted, countering with a move that left the cultists seeing stars. Back in engineering, Mara and Jelko were still basking in their narrow escape. Think we'll get a commendation for this? Jelko asked, half serious. Sure, Mara replied, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Right after they court-martial us for insubordination and reckless endangerment, Jelko laughed, a sound of genuine amusement in the chaos. Well, at least we're consistent. The comms crackled again, and Mara was surprised to hear Velk's voice, oozing with self-righteousness and delusion. You may have delayed the inevitable, but our cause is just. The artifact will be ours and we will reshape the galaxy, Velk, Thane replied, his voice the verbal equivalent of an eye roll. Have you ever considered therapy? Velk continued his monologue, oblivious to the sarcasm. We will ascend to a new plane, free from the tyranny of the mundane. Thane muted the channel, exchanging a look with Voss. Is it just me, or do these guys get crazier every transmission? Definitely crazier, Voss agreed. Think it's an occupational hazard, more like a prerequisite, Thane replied, unmuting Velk just in time to catch the tail end of his speech. And when the dust settles, we will be victorious, Velk declared, his holographic image flickering with fervor. Hold that thought, Thane interjected. We've got some more pressing issues, like making sure this ship stays in one piece. Velk's image flickered out, leaving the bridge quiet for a moment. Thane turned to Voss, his smile wry. Think he buys his own propaganda, probably sells it in bulk, Voss replied, leaning back in her chair with a sigh. With the artifact's power stabilizing the ship systems, The Ark Bastion was no longer on an express trip to oblivion. The cultists' attempts to seize control were faltering, their numbers dwindling as the crew pushed back with renewed determination. In engineering, Mara felt the weight of exhaustion settle in, her body screaming for rest. Jelko, noticing her drooping posture, nudged her with his elbow. "Hey, we're not dead." "That's gotta count for something," True, Mara replied, rubbing her eyes. "But I could really go for a nap that lasts a lifetime." "Sounds like a plan," Jelko said with a chuckle. "After we save the galaxy, of course," Mara agreed, a faint smile on her lips. Priorities. As the ship continued its precarious dance with the rogue planet, the crew's resolve was unshaken. They'd face the worst and come out the other side, battered but unbroken. On the bridge, Thane and Voss watched as the threat indicators slowly faded, replaced by a semblance of normalcy. "Looks like we've got a handle on things," Voss remarked, her voice tinged with disbelief. "Yeah," Thane replied, his relief tempered with caution. For now, anyway. The Ark Bastion had weathered the storm, but the rogue planet loomed large, a silent reminder of the challenges yet to come. The artifact's secrets remained tantalizingly out of reach, a puzzle waiting to be solved. But for the moment they were alive, and in the cold, unforgiving expanse of space that was no small victory. "Think we'll ever get a break?" Voss asked, her tone light but her eyes serious. "Not a chance," Thane replied, settling back into his chair. But hey, wouldn't have it any other way. As the crew of the Ark Bastion regrouped, their spirits were buoyed by the knowledge that they'd defied the odds once again. In a universe full of dangers and uncertainties, they were the masters of their own fate, sailing through the stars with irreverence and grit. And as long as they had each other, and a healthy dose of gallows humor, they'd face whatever the cosmos threw their way, unyielding and unafraid. The Ark Bastion floated in space like a drunk trying to navigate his way home after a rough night at the bar, its systems still twitching from the aftermath of Mara's gambit with the artifact. In the dim glow of the bridge, Captain Thane and Lieutenant Voss were busy coordinating the ship's defenses, or what was left of them. "We still in one piece?" Thane asked, rubbing his temples as if trying to manually straighten out the chaos that was his life. "Miraculously, yes," Voss replied, blowing a bubble with her gum before it popped with a satisfying crack. "But I wouldn't start planning our victory parade just yet." "Right. Always the optimist," Thane muttered, scanning the fluctuating readings on his console. "Any sign of Velk's next harebrained scheme?" "Funny you mention that," Voss said, her eyes narrowing at a new blip on the radar. "Looks like he's brought friends, a fleet of them, and they're not here for the sightseeing, of course, because one set of zealots isn't enough of a headache." Thane sighed, leaning back in his chair. "What's our play?" "Well, diplomacy's off the table unless you're fluent in cultish nonsense," Voss replied dryly. "I suggest Plan B. Make them regret ever crossing our radar." Thane nodded, his expression a blend of tired determination and grim amusement. "Time to see if we can't teach these fanatics the fine art of regret." Meanwhile, down in engineering, Mara was trying to coax more power from the artifact. "You sure this thing won't blow our faces off?" Jelko asked, casting a dubious glance at the glowing object. "No guarantees," Mara replied, her hands dancing over the controls like a pianist performing her magnum opus. "But without it, we're toast. And I'm not a fan of crispy, high stakes." "Just how I like it," Jelko muttered, wiping sweat from his brow. "What's the plan if Velk's crowd decides to storm the place?" "Improvise," Mara said with a shrug. "I'm sure we've got something to throw at them." "I hear wrenches make a heck of a deterrent," Jelko chuckled, his laughter cutting through the tension like a hot knife through butter. "Wrenches it is. Let's just hope we don't run out of them." The Ark Bastion's alert systems blared to life as Velk's fleet closed in, their ships emerging from the darkness like a wolf pack on the hunt. On the bridge, Thane and Voss prepared for the onslaught. "Looks like they're gearing up for a boarding party," Voss said, her fingers flying over her console. "Got any more of those brilliant ideas?" "Yeah, I've got one," Thane replied, a wry smile creeping onto his face. We make them fight for every damn inch. Sounds like a plan, Voss said, a glimmer of mischief in her eyes. Let's give them a welcome party they'll never forget. As the cultist ships closed in, Rax was still playing his own game of cat and mouse in the corridors, his makeshift weapon swinging with practiced ease. You know, I signed up for engineering, not pest control, he grumbled, taking down another cultist with a well-aimed swing. You're a jack of all trades now, one of the cultists quipped, ducking under Rax's next attack. Rax snorted, sidestepping the cultist's wild swing, and a master of survival. How's that working out for you? The cultist didn't get a chance to answer, Rax's bludgeon ensuring their conversation ended on a one-sided note. Back on the bridge, Thane watched the tactical display, each new alert a reminder of their precarious situation. Mara, how's that artifact holding up? He asked over the comms. Like a champ, Mara replied, though her voice carried the strain of someone balancing on a knife's edge. But it could use a break. You know, like the rest of us, sorry, but our vacation's been delayed, Thane replied, his voice carrying the sardonic edge of a man who'd long since accepted the universe's cruel sense of humor. Figures, Mara said with a weary chuckle. I'll see if I can squeeze out a little more magic. On the Ark Bastion's exterior, the cultist ships began their assault, weapons blazing as they tried to punch through the ship's defenses. Inside, the crew scrambled to hold the line, their resolve hardening like steel in a forge. What's the status on our weapons? Thane asked, his fingers tapping anxiously on the arm of his chair. Compromised, Voss replied, her tone as flat as a pancake. But we've got enough firepower to make them think twice. Good enough for me, Thane said. Let's show them what they're up against. As the battle raged on, the Ark Bastion shuddered under the strain, its systems straining to keep up with the demands placed on them. But the crew fought with a tenacity born of desperation, their defiance a beacon in the darkness. In engineering, Mara and Jelko were doing their best to keep the ship running, their hands moving with the speed and precision of a well-rehearsed duet. Think we'll make it through this one? Jelko asked, his voice tinged with hope and doubt. Why not? Mara replied, a mischievous grin flashing across her face. We've made it this far. Would be a shame to quit now. True, Jelko agreed, his laughter echoing through the chaos. And I'm not a fan of quitting. The cultists' assault intensified, their ships closing in with relentless precision. But the Ark Bastion's crew refused to yield, their resistance a testament to the indomitable spirit of humanity. On the bridge, Thane and Voss coordinated the defense, their synergy a well-honed machine. Think they'll listen to reason if we ask nicely? Voss asked, her sarcasm a comforting constant. Only if nicely involves a few well-placed torpedoes, Thane replied, a fierce determination in his eyes. Then let's be polite, Voss said with a smirk, her fingers dancing over the controls as she unleashed a volley of fire. The Ark Bastion shuddered but held fast, its crew rallying around their shared purpose. As the cultist ships began to falter, a new resolve took hold, their unyielding defiance a beacon in the storm. Below decks, Rax was still in the thick of things, his makeshift bludgeon a blur as he fought his way through the chaos. You know, I used to think space was all about exploration and discovery, he said, ducking under a wild swing. Not so glamorous now, is it? A cultist replied, their smile a twisted mockery of camaraderie. Not even close, Rax agreed, his bludgeon finding its mark with a satisfying crunch. But I've learned to appreciate the simple things like survival. With each passing moment the tide began to turn, the cultists' numbers dwindling as the Ark Bastion's crew held their ground. Their resolve, forged in the crucible of battle, was unyielding, their spirit unbreakable. In engineering, Mara and Jelko continued their dance, their efforts a symphony of ingenuity and desperation. Think the artifact's got any more tricks up its sleeve? Jelko asked, his eyes flicking to the glowing object. Only one way to find out, Mara replied, her gaze steady and sure. But I'd say we're due for a bit of luck. Here's hoping, Jelko said, his laughter a bomb against the storm. As the cultists' fleet began to retreat, their resolve faltering in the face of the Ark Bastion's unyielding defense. A new sense of hope took hold. The crew, battered but unbroken, rallied around their shared purpose, their defiance a beacon in the darkness. On the bridge, Thane and Voss watched as the cultist ships faded from view, their retreat a testament to the indomitable spirit of humanity. "Think they'll be back?" Voss asked, her voice a blend of relief and exhaustion. "Probably," Thane replied, a wry smile twitching at the corners of his mouth. "But we'll be ready. Just another day in paradise," Voss said, her laughter a bright spot in the gloom. As the Ark Bastion settled into a tenuous peace, the crew took a moment to catch their breath, their spirits buoyed by the knowledge that they'd defied the odds once again. In the corridors, Rax leaned against a wall, his breath coming in ragged gasps. "Well, that was fun," he said, his voice laced with weary amusement. "Fun?" a crewmate asked, raising an eyebrow. "Sure, why not?" Rax replied with a shrug. "Kept me on my toes." Below decks, Mara and Jelko were doing their best to coax more power from the artifact, their hands moving with the speed and precision of a well-rehearsed duet. "Think we'll make it through this one?" Jelko asked, his voice tinged with hope and doubt. "Why not?" Mara replied, a mischievous grin flashing across her face. "We've made it this far. Would be a shame to quit now." "True," Jelko agreed, his laughter echoing through the chaos. "And I'm not a fan of quitting." With the cultists' fleet retreating, the crew of the Ark Bastion regrouped, their resolve hardened by the trials they'd faced. Their defiance, a testament to the indomitable spirit of humanity, shone bright in the darkness. As the ship settled into a tenuous peace, the crew took a moment to catch their breath, their spirits buoyed by the knowledge that they'd defied the odds once again. In the corridors, Rax leaned against a wall, his breath coming in ragged gasps. "Well, that was fun," he said, his voice laced with weary amusement. "Fun?" a crewmate asked, raising an eyebrow. "Sure, why not?" Rax replied with a shrug. "Kept me on my toes." With the Ark Bastion stabilized, its crew took stock of their situation, their resolve unbroken by the trials they'd faced. They'd weathered the storm, their defiance a beacon in the darkness, and as long as they had each other, they'd face whatever the cosmos threw their way, unyielding and unafraid. Mara stood in the engineering bay, sweat dripping down her brow like she was auditioning for some space-themed survival show. She glared at the artifact, a contraption of glowing metal and mysterious energy fields. It was supposed to be their ticket out of this mess, their magic carpet ride, but it was acting like a stubborn mule, and not the kind you could bribe with a carrot. "All right, you oversized paperweight," she muttered, hands on her hips. "Time to show us what you've really got. Do your thing or I'll turn you into the galaxy's most expensive paperweight." Jelko, hunched over a console nearby, snorted. "I'd pay to see that. Though paperweights don't usually explode when you poke them the wrong way." "Explosive decor," Mara chuckled, tinkering with the artifact's settings. The new trend in home design. With a few more adjustments, a hum resonated through the bay, a sound that was either very promising or very ominous. Mara decided to bet on the former. "Okay, Jelko, hit the juice. Let's see if this thing can pull a rabbit out of its hat. Fingers crossed we don't get a bomb instead," Jelko quipped, throwing the switch. The artifact flared to life, its glow intensifying until it bathed the room in an unsettlingly beautiful light. Outside, a force field materialized around the Ark Bastion, shimmering like a cosmic mirage. For a moment, everything was silent, as if the universe held its breath to see what would happen next. Then, like a wave crashing against the shore, the force field expanded, sweeping over Velk's fleet. Ships that had been menacingly close were suddenly thrown back, their coordinated assault crumbling like a house of cards. The cultists, always so sure of their divine mission, were now scrambling like rats on a sinking ship. Back on the bridge, Captain Thane watched the display with a mix of relief and satisfaction. "Well, would you look at that? A miracle, courtesy of human stubbornness and a bit of cosmic junk." Voss leaned back in her chair, chewing her gum thoughtfully. "Always knew we had a few tricks up our sleeves. Now about Velk." Thane's eyes hardened. Time to give our preacher a sermon of his own. The hologram flickered to life, and there was Velk, looking like a prophet who just realized the lightning bolt he prayed for was headed right for him. "Captain Thane," Velk began, sanctimonious tone as thick as ever. "You persist in defying, cut the crap," Velk, Thane interrupted, waving a dismissive hand. "We've had enough of your blessed drivel. We both know this isn't about divinity. It's about you wanting a throne, not a pew." Velk's facade cracked, the serene mask slipping to reveal the petty megalomania beneath. "You dare?" "I dare," Thane said flatly. "Because unlike you, I'm not trying to rewrite the universe according to my whims. I just want to keep my crew alive. So, what's it gonna be, Prophet? You gonna keep peddling your snake oil, or are you gonna step down and save what's left of your sorry fleet?" Velk hesitated, the conviction in his eyes flickering like a candle in a hurricane. Around him, his followers were visibly shaken, faith crumbling under the weight of reality. The rogue planet's pull, once a symbol of their supposed divine favor, was now just another cosmic hazard. Voss leaned over, her voice low and amused. "Looks like the sheep are losing faith in their shepherd." "Yeah," Thane replied, a grim smile playing on his lips. "Let's see if he can handle a little divine disillusionment." Velk's shoulders slumped, the fight bleeding out of him. "This isn't over, Thane," he snarled, though his words lacked the fervor of conviction. "You may have won this battle, but the war will be over before it begins if you keep this up." Thane finished for him. "Now, run along, Velk. Take your followers and find another rock to preach from." With a final scowl, Velk's hologram fizzled out, leaving the bridge in silence. Voss let out a low whistle. "Think he'll actually go quietly?" "Doubt it," Thane replied, settling back into his chair. "But maybe his followers will see sense. Or at least sense enough to realize following a madman into the abyss is a terrible life choice." In the engineering bay, Mara and Jelko watched as the artifact's energy faded, the force field retracting now that its job was done. "Well, that was unexpected," Mara said, a hint of awe in her voice. Jelko nodded, wiping his brow. "Not bad for a piece of cosmic junk. Makes you wonder what else it can do." "Hopefully not explode," Mara replied dryly. "But if it does, at least we'll go out with a bang." As the Ark Bastion drifted back into a more stable orbit, the crew began the grim task of assessing damages and patching up wounds, both physical and metaphorical. They'd survived against all odds, and the ship's shaky piece was a testament, not to their divine favor, but to their sheer, unyielding tenacity. In the corridors, Rax leaned against a wall, shaking his head. "You know, I always thought I'd die of old age, not because some lunatic decided he wanted to play God. Would have made for a boring story, though," a passing crewmate commented with a grin. "True," Rax conceded, a sardonic smile creeping onto his face. "Guess I'll stick around for the sequel." As the immediate threat receded, the Ark Bastion's crew found themselves basking in the rare glow of victory. They'd faced down fanaticism with nothing more than grit and a bit of borrowed cosmic magic, proving once again that humanity, for all its flaws, could still pull off the impossible when it mattered. Back on the bridge, Thane watched the tactical display as Velk's fleet slinked away, their zeal dimmed, their purpose lost. "Think they'll come calling again?" Voss asked, her voice a blend of exhaustion and hope. "If they do, we'll be ready," Thane replied, a promise more to himself than anyone else. "And if Velk tries to play Messiah again, we'll knock him off his soapbox for good." Voss chuckled, blowing a bubble with her gum. "Here's to that. And maybe a few less cultists next time, or none at all." Thane leaned back, a rare moment of calm settling over him. "Until then, I think we've earned a little breathing room." The Ark Bastion, patched and battered, continued its silent vigil in the void, a testament, not to divine providence but to the stubborn, maddening brilliance of its human crew. They'd survived the storm, and while the universe was still as chaotic and uncaring as ever, they'd proved one thing: they were more than capable of weathering whatever it threw their way. In engineering, Mara and Jelko continued their work, the artifact now dormant but still a source of fascination. "Think we can get it to do our laundry next?" Jelko joked, eyeing the contraption with a mix of respect and wariness. Maybe, Mara replied with a smirk, but only if you're willing to risk wearing clothes that might explode explosive fashion. Now there's an idea. Jelko chuckled, the tension of the past Iors finally easing. As the Ark Bastion settled into a fragile peace, the crew reflected on their ordeal. They'd faced down madness and zealotry, survived by the skin of their teeth, and come out on top. For now, at least, they had a moment to breathe, to mend, and to prepare for whatever awaited them in the infinite expanse of space. "Here's to surviving," Rax said, raising an imaginary glass as he joined his crewmates in the mess hall, "and to hoping our next adventure involves less divine intervention, or at least less cultists," Thane added, a grin tugging at his lips. Voss blew another bubble, her eyes glinting with mischief. "Here's to that. And maybe a vacation that doesn't involve dodging meteors or manic preachers." The laughter that followed was genuine, a sound that echoed through the ship with a warmth that defied the cold void outside. They'd earned their reprieve, however brief, and for now, that was enough. The Ark Bastion hung in space like a cat trying to decide whether to jump or not, a little scratched, definitely filthy, and sporting a look that said it just might be worth the attempt. The crew, meanwhile, was a collection of half-exhausted, half-jubilant souls who had just escaped doom on the cosmic stage. But of course, the universe had never been one for applause. Captain Thane stood on the bridge, overseeing the operation with more caffeine than blood in his veins. His eyes scanned the tactical display, now showing Velk's fleet as retreating dots heading for the galactic version of a timeout corner. "Well," Thane said, voice a mix of relief and something that was almost happiness, "I think we've officially pissed off every cultist in the sector." "Only took us one rogue planet and a magic paperweight to do it," Voss replied, stretching like a cat that had finally found a sunbeam. Her gum chewing was the soundtrack to their little victory. "Could have been worse." "Could have been no planet, or no paperweight," Thane agreed, though the thought of Velk and his zealots still gnawed at him like a stray thought you just couldn't shake. "Still, I'd prefer if our next heroic stand was against something a little less fanatical." A snort from Voss. "Like what?" "Killer space kittens." Thane chuckled, though he doubted even killer space kittens would have the gall to call themselves prophets. Anything without a sermon, really. In the engineering bay, Mara and Jelko surveyed the artifact, now dormant. It sat there smugly like a tech-obsessed Buddha. Mara leaned closer, eyes scrutinizing every detail as if daring it to blink first. "What do you think it's up to now? Plotting a coup?" Jelko shrugged, wiping grease off his hands. "Probably dreaming about the good old days when it was wrecking ships and hearts. Maybe it's just tired of being the hero." "Join the club," Mara muttered, tapping it like one might a misbehaving toaster. "Think we can turn it into a coffee maker? We'd save a fortune on caffeine." "Only if you like your coffee served with a side of explosive potential." Mara grinned. "Best kind of coffee, then." Elsewhere, Engineer Rax was busy ensuring the Ark Bastion didn't turn into a sieve. He was mending a section of the hull where a particularly rude meteor had tried to say hello. "You know, I always thought my life would involve less patching and more lounging," he mused to no one in particular. A fellow engineer, barely old enough to shave, nodded sympathetically. "You're in the wrong profession for lounging, mate." "Yeah. I figured that out around the same time I learned meteor showers aren't nearly as romantic as they sound." Rax gestured to the scarred ship. "Guess we're all just trying to keep this old bucket floating." "Floating and shooting stuff," the young engineer added, with the optimism of someone who hadn't yet been around long enough to see how often things hit the fan. "So, any chance those cultists will just give up?" Rax laughed, a sound as dry as a Martian summer. "Cultists giving up? That'd be a first. More chance of us finding a unicorn in the cargo bay." Back on the bridge, a message came through the alert systems, crackling with the static of old tech pushed to its limits. It was a report on the rogue planet itself, a cosmic enigma that had sparked Velk's ambition and nearly their doom. Thane glanced at Voss. You ever wonder what's so special about that hunk of rock, other than being in the wrong place at the wrong time? Voss replied, blowing a bubble before letting it pop with a satisfying snap. Maybe it's full of buried treasure or ancient alien secrets, or, Thane countered, it's just a big, lonely rock with delusions of grandeur, kind of like Velk. Sounds about right, though it'd be nice if it had some answers to go with all the trouble it caused. Voss leaned back, eyes on the tactical display. At least it's not our problem anymore. Thane nodded, though something about the rogue planet still itched at the back of his mind. It was a mystery, the kind that explorers loved and realists despised. Maybe one day someone will figure it out. Hopefully someone with more curiosity than common sense, Voss said with a grin. You know, the kind that usually gets eaten first in horror flicks. The crew worked tirelessly over the next few days, patching up the Ark Bastion, making sure she was spaceworthy, or at least as close to it as she ever got. The force field had done its job, but not without a cost. Systems needed recalibrating, and the shield generators were as temperamental as a diva on a bad hair day. Mara, back in engineering, was elbow-deep in diagnostics. So, think we got enough duct tape to hold this baby together? Jelko glanced over, a grin tugging at his lips. Only if we steal some from Rax's stash. Otherwise, we'll be using hope and good intentions. And possibly some prayers, Mara added, though she figured after their recent tangle with religious zealots, most of the crew had had their fill of divine intervention. Meanwhile, Rax took a rare moment to relax, sitting in the mess hall with a group of engineers. He raised a mug of something that was probably coffee, though it tasted like engine coolant. Here's to Velk and his merry band of nutjobs, he toasted, voice dripping with sarcasm. May they find another rock to worship. Laughter rippled through the group, a welcome sound after days of tension. And leave us the hell alone, someone added, lifting their own mug in solidarity. To freedom from fanatics, Rax echoed, taking a swig. And maybe a little less drama next time we go for a stroll among the stars. Back on the bridge, Captain Thane watched as the Ark Bastion's repairs progressed. The crew was a seamless machine, each cog turning with precision born of necessity and more than a little desperation. They'd survived, and now they were rebuilding, not just their ship but their resolve. Voss sidled up, thumbing through reports. Looks like Velk's fleet has finally scuttled off. We're clear. For now, Thane replied, though he knew the galaxy was full of Velks, self-righteous, power-hungry, and dangerous. But if they want a rematch, we'll be ready. With our trusty paperweight, Voss said, gesturing toward the dormant artifact. And a crew that knows how to use it, Thane added. Who knows, maybe next time we'll turn the thing into a weapon. Or a really fancy lamp. Voss chuckled, though she knew Thane was only half joking. As long as it doesn't explode on us first. As the days passed, the Ark Bastion's hull was mended, systems recalibrated, and the force field now hummed with a new, confident energy. The rogue planet was still out there, a silent sentinel in the void, watching over a mystery that had nearly cost them everything. Yet despite the chaos and the madness, the crew found a strange kind of peace. They'd faced down a fanatic, held their ground, and lived to tell the tale. In the mess hall, Rax and his fellow engineers swapped stories, the laughter more frequent now, the shadows of their ordeal slowly fading. So, Rax said, leaning back with a satisfied sigh, anyone up for a vacation on a nice, calm asteroid? You know, one without cults or rogue planets. Only if it comes with a beachfront view, a crewmate quipped, drawing fresh laughter. Beachfront or bust, Rax agreed, raising his mug once more. Here's to surviving and maybe finding some peace among the stars. In engineering, Mara and Jelko continued their work, the artifact a constant, enigmatic presence. Think it dreams, Jelko mused, nodding toward the hunk of metal and mystery. Probably, Mara replied with a smirk. Dreams of being left alone, maybe, kind of like us. Jelko laughed, shaking his head. Well, here's hoping its dreams don't involve blowing us to bits. Or turning into a toaster, Mara said with a wink. though I'd settle for a coffee maker. As the Ark Bastion resumed its patrols, the crew took solace in their victory, however fleeting. They'd fought, they'd won, and despite the odds, they'd survived. The rogue planet remained an enigma, a curiosity for another time, another crew, perhaps braver or just more foolish. Captain Thane stood on the bridge, eyes on the stars. "Think we'll ever find out what's up with that planet?" he asked, mostly to himself. "Maybe," Voss replied, leaning against the console. "Or maybe it's just another piece of cosmic junk like the rest of us." Thane chuckled, a quiet, exhausted sound. "Here's hoping it stays that way. I've had enough divine mysteries for one lifetime." As the Ark Bastion drifted through space, the universe continued its indifferent dance, uncaring of the drama on its stage. But for the crew, each day was a victory, a testament to the stubborn, irreverent brilliance of humanity, a species that thrived on chaos and laughed in the face of gods.